Welcome to the Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're going to look at a really fascinating snapshot of our modern world. Today, we're exploring this profound idea of the ripple effect. We're going to zero in on the global events from one single day, May 24, 2026, and map out exactly how local actions, policy shifts, and even just totally isolated incidents create these massive, unpredictable ripples across the entire globe.
It's a huge question, right? How does one single day reshape the entire globe? When we check the news, it's so easy to see events as just isolated dots on a map. But actually scratch that. The geopolitical landscape is a lot more like a giant spider web. A tug in one corner vibrates all the way to the other side. And the events of May 24th perfectly illustrate this hyper-interconnected world of ours, where a simple diplomatic handshake, a tight local election, or literally just a single airline passenger can trigger international consequences.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our quick roadmap for today's Explainer. 1. Middle East diplomacy and tensions. 2. Shifting alliances in Asia. 3. Elections and extremism. And 4. The global Ebola ripple.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, Middle East Diplomacy and Tensions.
Now, what's really interesting about this emerging U.S.-Iran peace framework is the sheer scale of the concessions being drafted. We are looking at three massive pillars here. First up, a 60-day extension of the current ceasefire, which basically buys crucial time for diplomats to work. Second, a gradual lifting of the maritime blockade, essentially reopening the globally critical Strait of Hormuz to commercial trade. And third, a monumental security shift, requiring Tehran to relinquish its stockpile of 60% highly enriched uranium. But here's the thing. Agreements like this don't just happen in a vacuum. They require a staggering amount of multinational coordination. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, actually speaking from India at the time, noted there's been significant progress. But wait, look at the logistical reality of making that progress happen. To actually secure the deal, Russia has offered to take in the transferred highly enriched uranium. So you have the U.S. and Iran drafting a framework, statements flying out of India, and Russian infrastructure acting as the release valve. It's literally a geopolitical jigsaw puzzle.
And this brilliantly illustrates how external tensions almost always fuel intense internal political friction. Take a look at Israel's capture of the global Samud flotilla aid convoy. Hundreds of international activists were moved into deportation pipelines. But look at the stark divide this caused right inside the Israeli cabinet. On one side, you've got right-wing National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who leaked footage of the bound detainees. On the exact opposite side, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu publicly rebuked the leak, explicitly calling it provocative and super damaging to Israel's global image. It's just a perfect example of how a single geopolitical event completely fractures domestic political consensus.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 2, Shifting Alliances in Asia.
Words matter on the global stage, folks, and few words carry as much weight as these. During a mid-May U.S.-China summit over in Beijing, diplomatic sources revealed that Chinese President Xi Jinping heavily condemned Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Xi specifically called out Takaichi's recent parliamentary declarations about potentially deploying Japanese self-defense forces to defend Taiwan. By officially labeling this posture as dangerous and neo-militaristic, Beijing is drawing a very clear, very sharp rhetorical line in the sand regarding regional defense.
But Japan's response to regional pressures isn't just talk, it is highly operational. Tokyo government sources confirmed that the Filipino military will remain a core recipient of Japan's official security assistance framework for a fourth consecutive year. By extending this military and security aid, Japan is substantially cementing a massive maritime defense partnership with the Philippines. So you can see how the diplomatic tension we just looked at directly correlates with these physical, strategic security investments right along the maritime borders.
Moving right along to Section 3, Elections and Extremism.
Let's zoom into the Mediterranean for a second and look at the fragmented political landscape in Cyprus. Citizens just headed to the polls to elect 56 of the 80 seats in the House of Representatives. And the exit polling, it shows a wildly divided electorate. We have an incredibly fierce, absolute neck-and-neck race between the conservative DISY party and the left-wing AKHEL party. But crucially, and this is a big deal, while the center battles it out, the hard-right Elan party is simultaneously projected to lock in major legislative gains. It's a striking snapshot of shifting political gravity in the region. Now, while some nations battle at the ballot box, others are facing incredibly grim realities on the ground. 20. That is the tragic number of lives lost on this single day in a catastrophic car park bombing.
The blast ripped through a packed car park right next to a major train station in Quetta, Balochistan in Pakistan. On top of the 20 people killed, over 50 others were severely injured. The Balochistan Liberation Army, or BLA, an insurgent group operating in that region, officially claimed responsibility for the attack. It's a really sobering reminder of the devastating domestic instability and extremism that sovereign nations have to navigate every single day.
Okay, let's pivot to our final theme for today. Section 4, the global Ebola ripple.
So the crucial point here is just how quickly a local health crisis becomes a frantic international scramble. Look at the timeline of this commercial flight routing from Paris to Detroit. Amid all the severe anxiety over the Central African Ebola outbreak, a passenger originating from the Democratic Republic of Congo was mistakenly allowed to board. Once this border screening failure was discovered mid-flight, literally over the ocean, the plane had to be urgently diverted right out of U.S. airspace and sent straight to Montreal, Canada. One single screening error in Europe turned a routine transatlantic flight into a multinational health emergency.
Former White House health official Dr. Deborah Birx stepped in to publicly urge calm in the wake of the diversion. But honestly, her accompanying warning is what we really need to pay attention to here. She noted that outdated screening data remains a critical vulnerability. That tells us that while our physical borders might be heavily guarded with walls and checkpoints, our digital and data-driven borders, the very systems tasked with tracking invisible viral threats, are dangerously lagging behind the sheer speed of modern global travel.
And the ripple effect of that specific vulnerability touches everything, even international culture and sports. In a massive secondary health fallout from this epidemic, the U.S. government actually issued strict directives regarding the World Cup. The Democratic Republic of Congo's national football personnel were ordered to undergo tight medical isolation protocols. The whole aim here is to prevent any potential transmission inside the World Cup training infrastructure. Think about that for a second. An outbreak in Central Africa is literally dictating the daily movements of elite athletes on the complete opposite side of the planet.
Which brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. We spend billions on maritime defenses, geopolitical summits, and military aid, right? But if outdated screening data allows a totally invisible threat to cross oceans and borders so effortlessly, are our international security measures looking in the completely wrong direction? It's a huge question of where our true vulnerabilities actually lie in such a deeply connected world. Thank you so much for diving into the ripple effect with me today, and make sure you keep questioning how all the pieces of our global puzzle fit together.